how do you define innovation, and what are some of the innovation challenges in an established company like Monsanto? I was looking up Wikipedia. You were established in 1904, so very old and established companies. And maybe you can share some of your ideas on
Sure.
How
Great.
to.
I would love to do that, and it's my first time at the event, so I'm looking forward to the interaction. How many of you are involved in agriculture? Right? Two to three hands. So that helps me. Let me give you the other side of the story. I grew up on a small farm about 100 miles south of Chicago, and was one of those weird people that always knew they wanted to be a scientist. And I had the life-changing experience of being a postdoc at UCSF right when the biotechnology industry was starting, and people would clone the first genes for human insulin, and the tools were being developed that would clearly revolutionize healthcare and medicine. My interest was how do we use these tools in agriculture? I joined Monsanto in 1981. We created the first GMO plant in 1983, and our technology now is basically GMOs are grown in 30 countries on about 25% of the world's land, and it's been a phenomenal story in terms of helping farmers. So when I think about innovation, I come with a very pragmatic approach, and I always give my lecture to an incoming PhD or an incoming scientist that says, in this company, we want to have the most outstanding science and innovation that you can create, but it really doesn't count until it turns into products that benefit farmers and growers. So it's hard for me to really say what innovation is. So what we tend to focus on is how do we measure it and how do we track it. And so our system for product advancement, and a lot of the products that we develop, if we discover a new gene to create a new biotech seed, it takes us about 6 or 7 years to go through the commercial development and the stage gate through regulatory. So we tend to have very systematic processes that track the movement from the laboratory to the field to the regulatory steps to commercial scale up and launch, and track that progression. The other thing that I focus on a lot from an innovation perspective is we put a lot of effort in ensuring that we have an appropriate balance between what I would call product extensions and true innovation. And we try to shoot for a ratio of about 75% product extensions, because they pay the bread and butter, and about 25% new innovation spaces. So for us, an established product would be a new corn or a tomato seed, or a next generation bug or weed control trait. And innovation space would look like a brand new project where we're using precision ag tools, or understanding the microbes that actually live in the soil and figuring out how that can contribute to the growth of a crop, just to kind of put that into perspective. The reason that's important is I find, as I talk to research leaders and the challenge, it's very easy if all your research is product extensions, but you never create the game changer. And it's equally easy if all of your research is focused on 10 years out and you never deliver. So that balance and tracking, I think, is really important. Now, the other thing that's the interesting experience that I had, and so Monsanto started in 1904. We started making aspirin and dyes, like a lot of industrial chemical companies. When I joined Monsanto in '81, we were an industrial chemical company. I joined with 2 other scientists. So we were actually a small biotech startup within an established industrial chemical company. And the thing that it taught me was generally organizations resist change dramatically. And that really puts a real premium into building an organization builds a lot of processes, it builds a lot of ways to get things done that can really stifle innovation. We had the fortunate experience of being incredibly incredible, but I went through the experience of an entrepreneurial startup within a large company. And then I also had the experiences, as you may know, Monsanto actually recreated itself about 12 or 13 years ago. We were IPO'd And I had the experience of sitting on the runway in Denver to see if the bankers would actually fund our IPO, and it was pretty close. So I've had that startup experience as well that plays to it. And one of the things that those kind of things have reinforced in me as we think about what drives innovation is basically you need to continually put change and pressure on the organization. And that can be structural change in terms of organizational structure. We tend to run a matrix organization where we have functional by commercial target and operate in a team-based environment that drives a lot of change. The other thing, and it's probably my biggest piece of advice, is maintaining a very strong external focus. So we literally have thousands of research agreements with individual professors, small startup companies, collaborations with large companies in the ag, the engineering, the data science space. And about 25% of our R&D is used to fund partnerships and collaborations outside of what would be our core pipeline. And I think that's been a key to our success from the very beginning. So that would be my first thoughts on innovation and the importance of measuring and tracking it, and then the importance of really continuing to evolve and pressure. I mean, like many of you, when I first became a manager and a leader, I studied a lot of the case studies of the companies that failed. For one reason or another, whether it's, the classic Polaroid story or, all the other ones that you're familiar with. And almost every one of them, you can find the root cause being the absence of enough external vision to understand the challenges that you face. And I think the requirement to counteract that is to put so much pressure on the organization that it replaces itself. And that's, for me, the mantra. If we're running harder and faster than a competitor, it's hard to get caught from behind.
I think we have a similar mentality. There was a book by John Cotter. I don't read many of these books, but this one is a good one. It's actually by Harvard Business School emeritus professor, very famous guy, John Cotter. He talks about the model there should be dual operating systems, which makes sense in your language. There's an operating system of the thing that's stable, that is the company that produces value and revenue. And the second operating system is the entrepreneurial one that is constantly reinventing itself. It's a very flat organization, doesn't believe in hierarchy. It solves problems in a team-like capacity with diverse perspectives. And the trick is to have those operating systems running in parallel, but then a way to couple them. And I think we in Bell Labs actually very much see ourselves as that second operating system that's very flat. I will talk to individual researchers that nominally might be 5 levels below, don't care at all. They can come to my office, explain their ideas, they can talk about what it is that they think we should do, and we listen to them without any regard to hierarchy. Diverse perspectives, very sort of entrepreneurial way of behaving, and then our trick is to spin that into things that the company can adopt. And that's actually the only place where we've struggled, because as you know, we invented the laser, the transistor, cellular, Unix, C, C++, and the list goes on and on. But many of those were not commercialized by our parent company. And at the time, it didn't matter because we were a monopoly owned by AT&T, and we spread the goodwill. But now I think what we struggle with more recently is how to actually commercialize that to the benefit of the parent company so they pay the bills. And I think that's one that we haven't entirely solved. But I think in the new world, actually, I would say more collaboration externally. Cloud actually helps because we can test things in the market in a way that we weren't allowed to when we were building entire products that were bespoke boxes that went in operator networks. That's hard for Bell Labs to do because that's an entire development effort that we're not equipped for. But if it's a piece of software or a design for a new piece of hardware that we can produce in a hardware fab and produce a piece of software that launch in the cloud, we can actually test our ideas in the cloud. And so I think that's one of the ways I think things are going to change is we can actually innovate externally, test things in the market, and then the company can decide to pick it up once they've seen the feedback. And I think that's one of the new dimensions that we're exploring.
The descriptions resonated with the way we think about innovation, but I had a couple of points. One is there's different types of innovation, and this was touched on. But there's really novel innovation, there's incremental innovation, but there's also disruptive innovation. Innovation that may disrupt your own business model. And you really have to think about all 3 types and particularly the third one, because often large organizations don't want to disrupt themselves, but if you don't cannibalize yourself, someone else will happily do it to you. And the second thing is, as you become bigger, and certainly Microsoft has seen this in its history, you do become more regimented with more process. And you need to think about maintaining a culture where it's okay to fail. Because what happens is, as people get more set in their ways, the risk of taking a big gamble on something that may not pan out, you may have an annual review process where you say, what was the person's impact in the last year? And the reality is, they took a big bet and decided it wasn't worth it. And so they've achieved nothing. So if you compensate them that way, you will undermine a culture of innovation. So you also have to think about how your HR processes work and what kind of innovation and how you ring fence that and create that environment, kind of a microcosm within a bigger thing.
I just underline, I couldn't agree with you more. As I look at leaders in the organization, particularly in an organization which is team-based that tends to drive itself along consensus lines, courage and risk-taking is, for me, one of the huge breakout parameters as we evaluate people.
I took a look at the participants and the companies they represent. I would say probably 80 to 90% of the companies could be described as established companies. So I'm sure there must be some opinions or questions in the audience. If anyone has a comment, you can
So I
share.
have a question, and it strikes me the catalyst for disruption and how being an acquisitive company might change your perspective more rapidly. Bob, I know Monsanto acquired Climate Corp, a spinoff from Google,
Yep.
right, which has got to be an entirely different culture. Can you speak to the disruption, kind of driving the disruption quicker based on acquisitions?
Absolutely, and I think both partnerships and acquisitions and organizational change are really the three tools that drive that kind of disruptive pressure in the organization. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I kind of describe, Monsanto, an industrial chemical company, became a biotech company, became a seed company, and my prediction is in a few years we'll be a data science company focused on those integrated agricultural solutions. And frankly, there's just some things that you can't do on your own, and acquisition is key. And so we looked really hard at acquisitions and partnerships to drive a lot of the culture change. And it's actually been pretty phenomenal to see the ripple effect of that particular acquisition across so many of our established business lines. And it's not only transformational in the delivery of data science and decision tools to growers, but I think a remarkable impact has been how it's caused us to rethink our own processes to make them even more effective in the future.
These values or processes, are they institutionalized? Because you seem to have reinvented yourself at least 3 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, that's one of the things that has excited me in the career, and that I look back on and feel the most pride in. And we've all commented on it. I mean, you have to have an environment where you can fail. And I look back at all the projects that I funded and all the things that we screwed up and all the things that didn't work. I never worry a second about those. I worry about the ones that we didn't do, that we thought about, but someone else did, or we didn't push. So I think that balance, like I said, for me, most companies are too conservative and most leaders are too conservative. So enabling that ability to take risk and that ability to fail is critical to changing the cultures.
Another question I have is to Marcus is you say you have this operating system of innovation and kind of entrepreneurial spirit, but how can you balance that with sort of what we heard today with Apple, in that they got a laser focus on what they know they need to do. So how do you get people to be thinking outside the box, yet this is where we're going?
Yeah, one thing we've done is combine the CTO function with Bell Labs. So I actually have 2 jobs. It's one of our CEO's financial economies as well. It's 2 jobs, 1 salary. But CTO is meant to essentially set the direction for the company and the industry. Because CTOs have a vision. They think I define the industry, not just my own company. And then Bell Labs increasingly innovates around that vision. And since the CTO is also for the company, this is a change that we've made recently to go back to this model. We had it historically, that the CTO for AT&T also ran Bell Labs, but we decoupled that. And that was actually the period where we were least successful because you had this flywheel spinning out inventions and patents that weren't necessarily matched to the industry need because scientists are actually relatively detached from real markets. In fact, when I went back to Bell Labs recently, I took over 3 years ago, I asked them, why do you work on what you work on? And they gave me two answers. Because I always have, or because I thought it was cool. And that's really not a good model for something that's trying to innovate for an industry or a company. And so I changed that by coupling it back to sort of a CTO-led vision. And it's actually working quite well. CTO defines company direction. CTO aligns researchers, doesn't tell them how to solve the problem, but tells them which problem to solve. And I actually went back and asked, have you lost anything because I'm telling you which problems to solve? They said, no, thank God someone was actually doing that, because we had no idea. Right, so I actually think the trick is to allow them the freedom to fail, the freedom to create, but tell them which problems to solve. And if that set of problems is also agreed by the company, you've got a relatively good coupling model there, a resonance. And then it's just a case of, can you actually do the transfer? Can you free up funds on the company side to start the new product? And that's the only hitch that, in constrained environments, it's still difficult to find the money to start the development, even if the thing looks incredibly cool. But we're working on that. Does that help?
Yeah.
I think the coupling point is an important one, and when I first became the CTO of Monsanto, we had kind of the traditional stovepipe structure that separated the different R&D functions from the development, from the commercial functions, and one of the things we did early on was to create a team-based structure so that even if it is a early stage blue sky R&D project, there's somebody who has a commercial background associated with that team. And that coupling really helps guide, steer, weed out projects. And I've found that to be really invaluable even at the earliest stages of a project.
I'll ask this to Joe, and this is a three-part question.
3 parts, you didn't tell me.
What's the role of
You better write it down.
Got it.
What's the role of CTO in driving innovation? And how do you define success for a CTO organization? And as you look at the future, what kind of skill sets and tools do you think CTO organization needs, and how do you nurture them, and how do you incorporate them as part of the structure?
Well, gosh, is that all?
That's it.
Oh, okay, great, good. Well, that'll only take a minute. Well, it's been really interesting listening to the conversation so far. And Plantronics, where I work, is probably the middle-aged company in the room. So we're a 53-year-old headset company in Santa Cruz, California. And we'll talk about some of the things we're doing going forward. But what was interesting to me is I've spent a lot of time on both the CTO side of things as a CTO and running the product development house as well. And in fact, right now I run both of them. So I loved the comment about the 2 operating systems, because it really is an entirely different cadence, an entirely different way of doing things. And I think the art is lashing together what's the inter-process communications between those 2 operating systems to stay in the software model. So for me, where product development is naturally very, very focused on the here and now. It's on being on time, on quality, doing it economically. The best you can really hope for out of the product development organizations that I've been in across 3 or 4 companies is that they can find the sustaining innovations that are pretty close to the current technologies and processes. So they tend to find what's directly adjacent to them. So this is where I thought I was going to say something controversial, but maybe not actually. The piece for me that is most important for success as we tilt to the CTO role is that they deeply understand the business outcome or the customer outcome that we're actually looking for. So what are we actually trying to accomplish in the business? What are we trying to accomplish for the ecosystem, accomplish for the customer? And then go back to first principles and look for non-incremental ways to improve. So it's not pure research around new materials and new chips and moving to the cloud, but what are we actually trying to do for the customer or for the business? And then are there fundamentally different ways to impact the business, the cost performance? When there's not a separate strategy office in our company, it's co-located. Then also market adjacencies, massive expansions of TAM that are beyond what the team can do. So, or what the product team can do. So it's understanding the business, which is different than what I was taught in the early days of being a CTO. It's really understanding what we're trying to accomplish and how do we deliver 10x value to the customer for the same money, and what are the technologies to do that? Or how do we develop same value for a 10x reduction in what it costs? So with that in mind, I feel like the skill sets that we need in a CTO organization of the future, clearly technology is a given, but there's a lot more to it. There's really having people in the CTO's org that understand the business, that understand user experience, user behavior, and are able to actually conjure these new ways of accomplishing the same goal. You know, I often tell our CTO organization that that they're supposed to treat our customers like children. And what I mean by that is they should listen to every single thing that the customer says. They should smile and nod, okay? You should not give them what they ask for. You should think deeply about what they're actually asking for and what would actually be good for them 2 or 3 years down the road. Give them that instead, and be sure to tell them you love them the whole time, right? But that is well beyond understanding the latest technology. It's deeply understanding customer behavior. It's the chess moves that we heard about earlier today. If this is what they're asking for yesterday, and this is what they're asking for now, how do we play 2 or 3 chess moves into the future?